The discovery of Site 97B began with a geological survey that should have been routine. In March of 2019, a Foundation satellite monitoring network detected unusual seismic readings beneath a stretch of abandoned farmland in central Nebraska, approximately 40 kilometers from the nearest town. The readings were subtle but persistent, a rhythmic pulse occurring at precise 30-second intervals, consistent with mechanical activity rather than natural geological processes. Given the location's proximity to known Cold War military installations, Mobile Task Force Sigma-6, designated Deep Diggers, was dispatched to investigate. Dr. Sarah Chen led the investigation. She had spent 12 years with the Foundation, specializing in subterranean anomalies and abandoned military facilities that sometimes contained more than outdated weapons systems. Her team consisted of 4 others: Lieutenant Marcus Webb, security specialist and former Army Corps of Engineers; Dr. James Rothstein, a historian focused on Cold War-era military projects; technical specialist Angela Torres, responsible for electronic surveillance and communications; and Agent David Crane, a field operative with extensive urban exploration experience. They arrived at the coordinates on a gray morning in early April. The farmland had been abandoned for decades, the property changing hands through various shell corporations until it disappeared into bureaucratic obscurity. The farmhouse itself had collapsed years ago, leaving only a foundation and scattered timber. But 50 meters from the ruined house, they found what they were looking for: a concrete pad, 8 meters square, partially buried beneath years of accumulated soil and prairie grass. Ground-penetrating radar confirms a vertical shaft directly beneath this structure, Torres reported, studying her equipment. Depth extends beyond our scanning range, at least 300 meters, possibly much deeper. Webb circled the concrete pad, examining its edges. Standard Air Force construction from the late 50s, early 60s. This is consistent with Atlas or Titan missile silos, but there's no record of any installation at these coordinates. I checked every declassified document. Which means it was never officially declassified, Chen said, or never officially existed at all. It took them 6 hours to cut through the concrete pad with diamond-tipped saws. The slab was nearly a meter thick, reinforced with steel rebar that had somehow resisted corrosion despite decades of exposure to groundwater seepage. When the final section was lifted away by portable hydraulic jacks, they found themselves staring into absolute darkness. A metal ladder descended into the shaft, the rungs showing signs of rust but appearing structurally sound. Air quality? Chen asked. Torres held her scanner over the opening. Stale but breathable. Elevated CO2 levels, but nothing immediately dangerous. Temperature is constant at 14 degrees Celsius. No biological contaminants detected. Chen activated her helmet-mounted camera and radio. Foundation command, this is Sigma-6 actual. We're beginning descent into the structure. Estimated depth unknown. Maintaining radio contact on primary and backup frequencies. The response crackled through her earpiece. Copy that, Sigma-6 actual. You are cleared for exploratory descent. Exercise standard containment protocols for Cold War-era facilities. Be advised, you're operating in a potential information hazard zone. They descended single file, Webb in front, then Rothstein, Torres, Chen, and Crane, bringing up the rear. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, illuminating concrete walls that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light. The shaft was cylindrical, approximately 3 meters in diameter, and as they climbed down, Chen noticed something unusual. There was no graffiti, no signs of previous exploration, no evidence that anyone had been here since the facility was sealed. After 20 minutes of descent, they reached the first level. The ladder opened into a circular chamber, perhaps 10 meters across, with 4 corridors branching off in cardinal directions. Red emergency lights flickered weakly along the ceiling, somehow still drawing power after all these years. The effect was unsettling, casting everything in a dim crimson glow that made their shadows dance across the walls. Power grid is still active, Torres said, checking her multimeter against an exposed electrical panel. Some kind of independent generator system. Nuclear battery, probably. Those can run for decades without maintenance. The corridors were labeled with faded stenciled letters. North Tunnel, Personnel Quarters. South Tunnel, Command and Control. East Tunnel, Fuel Storage. West Tunnel, maintenance access. But it was the center of the chamber that drew their attention. Another shaft, much larger than the access tunnel they'd descended, opened in the floor. This one was at least 15 meters in diameter, surrounded by a metal railing. Chen approached carefully and aimed her flashlight downward. The beam disappeared into darkness. She couldn't see the bottom. "Missile shaft," Webb said, joining her at the railing. "This is where they would have stored the ICBM, but I've never seen one this deep. Standard Titan II silos were about 50 meters. This goes much, much deeper." "Maybe they were testing a new launch system," Rothstein suggested. "Something that required additional depth for protection or propulsion." Chen pulled a chemical light stick from her pack, cracked it, and dropped it into the shaft. They watched the green glow fall, expecting it to hit bottom within seconds. Instead, it fell for 10 seconds, 20, 30, becoming a tiny pinpoint of light that eventually disappeared entirely without any indication of impact. "That's not possible," Webb said quietly. "That would put the depth at over a kilometer. You couldn't build a missile silo that deep. The engineering challenges alone would be insurmountable, especially in the 60s. "Unless it wasn't originally built as a missile silo," Chen said. She had encountered too many anomalies disguised as conventional military installations to assume anything was what it appeared to be. They decided to explore the horizontal tunnels before attempting to descend further into the central shaft. The north tunnel led to a series of small rooms that had indeed served as personnel quarters. Bunk beds lined the walls, their thin mattresses still in place, covered with decades of dust. Personal effects remained on small metal shelves: books, photographs, a portable radio. Everything suggested the inhabitants had left in an organized fashion, taking what mattered but leaving behind the ephemera of daily life. Rothstein examined one of the photographs, a black and white image of a young man in an Air Force uniform. Date stamp says 1963. That fits with the construction style. But it was in one of the last quarters that they found the first indication something had gone wrong. The room looked like the others, except for the message scratched into the concrete wall above one of the bunks. The letters were deep, carved with something sharp over what must have been hours of effort. "It never stops counting." "Well, that's not ominous at all," Crane muttered. The command and control tunnel proved more informative. The corridor opened into a large circular room filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum of Cold War history. Banks of computers with reel-to-reel tape drives lined the walls. A large plotting board dominated one side of the room, showing what appeared to be Soviet cities marked with targeting coordinates. Communication consoles, radar displays, and launch control systems filled the space in organized rows. And in the center of it all, 2 launch control keys hung in their respective control panels, separated by several meters to ensure 2 operators would be required to initiate a launch. "This is incredible," Rothstein breathed, moving from console to console. "This is all original equipment. It's like they sealed the place and walked away." Taurus was examining the electrical systems. "Everything's still powered. I'm reading active current in most of these systems. Some of them are even running. Look at this." She pointed to one of the reel-to-reel tape drives. It was slowly turning, the tape moving from one spool to the other in a continuous loop. Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground temperature. "Can you access any of the computer systems?" "I can try." Taurus sat down at one of the consoles and began working the controls. The cathode ray tube display flickered to life, showing lines of green text on a black background. "System is still fully operational. I'm seeing logs, maintenance records, personnel rosters. Last entry is dated November 14th, 1963. "What does it say?" Chen asked. Taurus scrolled through the text. "It's a standard shift change log. Night crew coming on duty. Everything nominal. Nothing unusual. Then the entries just stop." "November 14th, 1963, Rothstein said. 8 days before Kennedy was assassinated. What else was happening then?" Before anyone could answer, a sound echoed through the chamber. It was faint at first, barely audible over the hum of the old equipment, but it grew steadily louder. A voice, calm and professional, speaking with the measured cadence of a military communications officer. "T-10 minutes and counting. All stations report ready status." They froze. listening. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the concrete spaces. "Did that come from the equipment?" Webb asked, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Taurus was already checking her instruments. "I don't think so. It's not broadcasting on any frequency I can detect. It's coming through the structure itself, like it's being conducted through the concrete." T-9 minutes, 30 seconds. Propellant loading confirmed. Internal power switch to battery mode. "That's a launch countdown," Webb said. "That's the sequence for a Titan II missile launch." Chen activated her radio. "Foundation Command, we're hearing what appears to be a recorded launch sequence. Recommend we evacuate and reassess." Static answered her, then more static, then nothing. "Taurus, what's wrong with the radio?" Chen asked. Taurus was frantically adjusting her equipment. "I don't know. We should have clear signal. We're not that deep. It's like something is jamming us, but I'm not reading any interference." T-9 minutes. Range Safety Officer reports clear corridor. Weather conditions nominal. The voice continued its countdown, unhurried and precise. Chen made a decision. We need to find the source of that recording. If this is some kind of automated system still running after 60 years, we need to shut it down. The last thing we need is a psychological hazard broadcasting launch sequences to anyone who stumbles into this place. They split up, searching the command and control room for speakers or broadcasting equipment. But the voice didn't seem to originate from any specific location. It simply existed in the space around them, as if the air itself was speaking. T-8 minutes, 30 seconds. Guidance system alignment complete. Final targeting coordinates confirmed. Crane was examining the launch control panels. "Hey Doc, you need to see this." Chen joined him at the console. The display panel showed a schematic of the missile silo with status indicators for various systems. Most of them were dark, but several were illuminated. Power, environmental, guidance, and one labeled simply payload. "This should all be dark," Crane said. "Even with emergency power, there's no reason for these systems to be active. There's no missile in the silo, right?" Webb had moved to the railing overlooking the central shaft. "Chen, you need to see this." She crossed the room and looked down into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing different. Then she realized what had changed. Far below, perhaps 100 meters down, there was a faint red glow. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, illuminating the shaft walls in rhythmic waves. T-8 minutes. Warhead arming sequence initiated. Confirm safe separation from fuel systems. "That glow wasn't there before," Chen said. "Something's activating down there." "Or something's waking up," Taurus added quietly. They returned to the central chamber where the ladders provided access to the lower levels of the silo. The main shaft descended into darkness, but now they could see that red glow more clearly from above. It pulsed in time with the countdown voice, which continued its steady march toward zero. "We need to go deeper," Chen said. "Whatever's down there, it's the source of the anomaly. That's what we came here to investigate." T-7 minutes, 30 seconds. Final crew evacuation complete. Blast doors sealed. "With respect, Doctor," Webb said, "that countdown voice is telling us to evacuate. Maybe we should listen to it." "It's been counting down for 60 years, Lieutenant. It's not giving us tactical advice, it's the anomaly itself." They descended into the central shaft. Metal platforms had been built into the walls at regular intervals, connected by ladders and catwalks. The construction was industrial and utilitarian, designed for maintenance access rather than comfort. As they climbed down, the red glow grew brighter and the countdown voice grew louder, no longer echoing from a distance, but seeming to emanate from the walls themselves. T-7 minutes. Fuel pressure stable, oxidizer flow nominal, all systems functioning within parameters. Chen counted the platforms as they descended. 10 meters between each level. They passed the first, second, third. At the fifth platform, approximately 50 meters below the command and control level, they found another chamber cut into the shaft wall. This one was smaller, dominated by a single large window that looked out into the shaft itself. The window was reinforced glass, thick and yellowed with age. Through it, they could see the shaft extending both above and below, and for the first time, they could see what was creating the red glow. Far below, perhaps another 100 meters down, something was moving. It was difficult to distinguish details at that distance, but it appeared to be a cylindrical object, massive in scale, that slowly rotated in place. The red glow emanated from ports or windows along its surface, pulsing in steady rhythm. T-minus 6 minutes, 30 seconds. Inertial guidance platform calibrated. Target acquisition confirmed. "Is that a missile?" Rothstein asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Webb was studying it through binoculars. "If it is, it's like nothing I've ever seen. The proportions are all wrong. It's too wide for its length, and it's rotating. ICBMs don't rotate in their silos." Taurus had her scanning equipment pressed against the window. "I'm reading massive electromagnetic activity. Whatever that thing is, it's drawing enormous amounts of power. The energy signature is off the scale." T-minus 6 minutes. Flight termination system armed. Abort procedures locked out. Launch sequence is committed. "Locked out?" Webb turned from the window. "That's not standard protocol. There should always be an abort option until the moment of ignition." Chen was beginning to understand. "It's not a real launch. It can't be. This is a loop, remember? The countdown never reaches zero. It just keeps cycling." "Then what's the point?" Crane asked. "Why build all this? Why create this anomaly, if nothing ever actually launches?" "Maybe that is the point," Chen said slowly. "Maybe the launch can't happen, but the countdown has to continue. Maybe something is being kept in a perpetual state of almost launching, but never quite reaching that moment." T-minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds. Terminal count sequence initiated. All personnel to minimum safe distance. They continued descending. The red glow grew brighter, the pulsing more intense. Chen noticed that her watch had stopped working. Taurus's electronic equipment was showing increasing interference. Even their flashlights seemed to flicker in time with the pulse from below. At the 10th platform, approximately 100 meters down, they found another inscription carved into the concrete wall. This one was more elaborate, the letters smaller and more precise. "The countdown is the cage. If it stops, it launches. If it launches, it arrives. If it arrives, everything ends. Keep it counting. Never let it reach zero." "That's not comforting," Crane said. T-minus 5 minutes. Hydraulic pressure building. Umbilical disconnect sequence ready. Flame deflectors in position. Rothstein was photographing the inscription. "This suggests the countdown is intentional. It's not a malfunction or a residual recording. It's a containment procedure." "Containing what?" Webb asked. "That thing down there?" T-minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Engine igniter sequence armed. Fuel flow valves ready for activation. They were close enough now to see details of the object below. It was indeed cylindrical, but its surface was covered with inscriptions, symbols that looked like no language Chen had ever encountered. They spiraled around the cylinder in intricate patterns, and as the object rotated, the symbols seemed to shift and rearrange themselves, creating new configurations. "Those symbols," Rothstein said, staring through binoculars. "They're not any known writing system, not Russian, not Chinese, nothing from Earth." "From Earth," Taurus repeated. "What are you suggesting?" T-minus 4 minutes. Main engine propellant loading complete. Chamber pressure rising to operational parameters. "I'm suggesting," Rothstein said carefully, "that this might not be a missile silo at all. I'm suggesting it might be a prison or a quarantine facility." The countdown continued, relentless and precise. Chen checked her watch again, forgetting it had stopped. According to the countdown, they had been hearing it for at least 6 minutes, which meant it should be approaching zero. But she had a growing certainty that when it reached zero, it would simply reset and begin again. The inscription had been clear. The countdown is the cage. They reached the 15th platform, now very close to the rotating cylinder. The heat was noticeable here, a dry warmth that seemed to radiate from the object itself. The red glow was almost blinding, forcing them to shield their eyes. Through squinted vision, Chen could see that the cylinder wasn't solid. There were openings in its surface, ports or hatches, and through them she could glimpse something moving inside. Something that might have been machinery, or might have been something else entirely. T-minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Guidance system locked on target coordinates. Trajectory calculations confirmed. "Dr. Chen," Webb said, his voice tight with tension, "I really think we should go back up now. Whatever this thing is, we're too close. If something goes wrong, if something was going to go wrong, It would have gone wrong 60 years ago, Chen interrupted. This is stable, dangerous, but stable. We need to understand what we're dealing with. T-minus 3 minutes. Range safety tracking confirmed. Telemetry systems functioning. All stations report go for launch. At the 20th platform, they found a control room that had been carved into the shaft wall. Unlike the chambers above, this one showed signs of hasty abandonment. Papers were scattered across desks. Coffee cups sat where they'd been left, the liquid long since evaporated to dark stains. And on one wall, someone had written in what appeared to be blood. It spoke to us. It told us what it was. It told us what would happen if we let it out. God help us, we believed it. Below that, in different handwriting, Johnson is dead, Martinez is dead, everyone who heard it directly is dead. The countdown is all that keeps it contained. Maintain the sequence. Never stop the count. T-minus 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Final systems check complete. No anomalies detected. Launch sequence proceeding normally. Taurus was examining the control panels in this room. Unlike the equipment above, these systems were more sophisticated, incorporating technology that seemed anachronistic for the 1960s. Digital displays showed streams of data, updating in real time. Oscilloscopes traced waveforms that pulsed in rhythm with the red glow. These systems are monitoring the object, Taurus said. They're tracking its rotation, its energy output, I don't even know what to call this. It's like they're measuring its state of existence. T-minus 2 minutes. Propellant tanks pressurized. Engine actuators responding. Guidance platform aligned and locked. Chen studied the displays. One of them showed a countdown timer, but it wasn't synchronized with the voice they were hearing. It was running faster, the numbers blurring past, as if it were counting multiple iterations simultaneously. As she watched, it reset to 10 minutes and began again, even as the voice announced 2 minutes remaining. It's looping, she said. The countdown is looping, over and over, faster than real time. What we're hearing is just one cycle out of thousands happening simultaneously. T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds. Final abort window has closed. Launch sequence is committed. All personnel acknowledge. If the countdown is the containment, Rothstein said, then what happens if the power fails? What happens if those nuclear batteries finally run out? No one wanted to answer that question. They descended to the final platform, now level with the rotating cylinder. This close, its true scale became apparent. It was at least 10 meters in diameter and perhaps 20 meters long. The symbols on its surface were deeply engraved, and as Chen watched, she realized they were glowing with their own light, independent of the red illumination from within. T-minus 1 minute. Ignition sequence initiated. Engine start imminent. Final countdown proceeding. Through one of the openings in the cylinder, Chen could see inside. What she glimpsed made her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't machinery. It was space. Impossible, infinite space, stretching away into distances that couldn't exist within the physical confines of the cylinder. And in that space, something moved. Something vast and ancient that had been counting down to its moment of release for over half a century. T-minus 30 seconds. Main engine ignition sequence active. Thrust chamber pressure rising. We need to go, Chen said suddenly. Now, back up quickly. Her tone brooked no argument. They climbed, moving as fast as safely possible on the metal ladders. Behind and below them, the red glow intensified, pulsing faster, brighter. T-minus 20 seconds. Engine turbopumps at full speed, propellant flow initiated. The voice was deafening now, no longer just heard but felt, vibrating through their bones and teeth. Chen's ears were ringing, her vision blurred. She focused on climbing, on the ladder rungs beneath her hands, on reaching the next platform and the next. T-minus 10 seconds. Main engine ignition. The light from below became almost solid, a physical force pushing up through the shaft. The metal platforms shook. Dust and small debris fell from above. 9, 8, 7, 6. Chen risked a glance down. The cylinder had stopped rotating. The symbols on its surface blazed with light. The openings were widening, and through them, that impossible space was expanding, pushing against the boundaries of reality. 5, 4, 3, 2. They reached the command and control level and kept climbing. The ladder to the surface access shaft was ahead. Just a little further. 1. Silence. The red glow vanished. The shaking stopped. For one moment that stretched into eternity, there was absolute stillness and darkness. Then, from far below, the voice began again. T-minus 10 minutes and counting. All stations report ready status. The cycle had reset. The countdown had never reached 0. It had jumped from 1 back to 10 minutes, maintaining the cage, preserving the containment. They didn't stop climbing until they reached the surface. When they finally emerged into the gray Nebraska daylight, Chen's radio crackled back to life. Sigma 6 Actual, this is Foundation Command. You've been out of contact for 47 minutes. Please report status. Chen looked at her team. They were pale, shaken, but alive. Webb was helping Taurus up the final rungs of the ladder. Rothstein and Crane stood at the edge of the concrete pad, staring down into the darkness they'd just escaped. Command, this is Sigma 6 Actual. Site requires immediate containment and monitoring. Recommend classification as Keter-class anomaly. We're going to need a permanent station here, with backup power systems and personnel trained to maintain observation. Understood, Sigma 6. Can you confirm the nature of the anomaly? Chen considered how to answer. How to explain what they'd seen. How to describe something that existed in a perpetual state of almost launching, held in check only by a countdown that could never be allowed to reach 0. It's a missile silo, she said finally. But the missile isn't from here, and if it ever launches, it won't be going up. It will be letting something through. The countdown is all that's keeping it contained. We need to make sure that countdown never stops. Copy that, Sigma 6. Containment teams are being mobilized. Hold position and maintain perimeter until they arrive. Chen ended the transmission and sat down on the grass beside the concrete pad. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of the countdown, conducted up through hundreds of meters of concrete and steel. T-minus 9 minutes, 30 seconds. Propellant loading confirmed. Internal power switch to battery mode. It would count forever, or until the day it didn't. Until the day the power failed, or some fool decided to try and stop it. And on that day, whatever was in that cylinder would complete its launch, not into space, but into reality itself. 3 weeks later, Site 97B was officially established. A small research station was constructed above the sealed silo, manned by a rotating crew of specialists, whose sole purpose was to monitor the countdown and ensure the power systems never failed. Additional nuclear batteries were installed, with redundant backups and automated fail-safes. The site was declared off-limits to all but essential personnel with Level 4 clearance or higher. Dr. Chen returned twice in the following months, conducting additional investigations of the upper levels. They found personnel records that confirmed the site had been constructed in 1962 as part of a classified project called Terminus Shield. The goal had apparently been to study an object that had been recovered from an impact crater in northern Canada in 1958. Something that had come from space, or claimed to have come from space, though the reports were unclear on that point. The project had ended abruptly in November 1963, when the object began communicating with the research team. What it told them was never recorded in any document they could find. But whatever the message had been, it convinced the project leaders that the object could never be allowed to complete its purpose. The solution had been ingenious and terrible. Trap it in a perpetual launch sequence, forever counting down to a moment that would never arrive. The personnel had been evacuated, the site had been sealed, the countdown had been left running, and for 60 years it had continued, unseen and unknown, until Foundation satellites had picked up its signal. In her final report, Chen included a recommendation that became official Foundation policy regarding SCP-3991. The countdown must be maintained at all costs. Loss of power to the site is to be considered an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. All Foundation resources should be directed to ensuring the continuation of the countdown sequence. We do not know what SCP-3991 will do if it reaches 0. We know only what the last crew of this facility believed, that it would be catastrophic beyond measure. Until we have evidence to the contrary, we must assume they were correct. The countdown is the cage. The cage must never be opened. Every 30 seconds, deep beneath the Nebraska prairie, the countdown continues. Every minute, hour, day, and year, it cycles through its sequence, a approaching zero, but never quite reaching it. The voice remains calm and professional, following protocols established decades ago by people who sacrificed everything to ensure those protocols would never fail. And in the depths of the silo, the cylinder rotates slowly in the darkness, covered with symbols from no earthly language, containing spaces that should not exist, waiting with infinite patience for the moment when the countdown finally stops, and it can complete the mission it began so very long ago. But that moment has not come. Not yet. Not while the Foundation maintains its vigil. Not while the countdown continues to echo through the concrete tomb, keeping its prisoner locked in eternal anticipation. T-minus 10 minutes and counting. All stations report ready status. The cycle continues, the cage holds, and somewhere in the impossible spaces within SCP-3991, something waits, counting down with the voice that keeps it contained, dreaming of the zero that will never come. Unless, of course, it does.